Hi there, I'm Amy.
And I'm Sue.
And we're the mother-daughter duo behind Chatter Matters.
Each week, we're going to be chatting through everyday challenges and how we navigate them as two women from different generations.
So get yourself comfy, grab your cup of tea or coffee, and let us show you why Chatter Matters.
Welcome back.
Welcome
It's
back.
So nice to have you join us again for another week.
Another week, and we're in double digits, lads. It's episode 10.
Episode 10, and at my house.
And yes, we're back at yours.
The OG space.
Indeed.
Which I'm very excited about.
Exactly. And if you're watching at home, you'll be able to see the upgrade in the background art design.
You've still got time to get yours.
I've got time. Exactly.
So this week, we thought we might talk about communicating with the siblings.
I'm having a moment with my sibling at the moment, with Marty's sat on the sofa with us, just loving life.
He is your younger sibling, isn't he?
He is.
Even
He's
though you
actually,
have a brother.
I do have a younger brother, but I think Marty's actually the epitome of the youngest sibling.
And I think probably you're more competitive.
Arguably, yes. Certainly competitive for your affection. With Marty, absolutely. I don't feel like I can compare life achievements with the dog.
So anyway, we thought this week we would talk about, communicating with siblings. It's a bit topical given Prince Harry.
Well, yes, but also we've had like lots of siblingy
stuff this weekend
going on this week, which I think is...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not always an easy subject, I don't think, for many people. You know, I think sibling relationships can be quite varied.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily some have very deep love and stay very connected, and other people are quite distant and separated, and some even estranged.
Yeah.
From
I think
siblings.
also it can be quite topical as well for parents of like, how do you help manage that sibling dynamic as well?
Yeah,
which I think is
a good angle. So before we talk about what was your thoughts about the Prince Harry thing? Have you seen it?
I don't really keep that in touch with it.
You're not really into the royal family,
I'm not
are
really.
you?
Apologies to the royal family. Not like you're going to be listening to this, but if you are, my bad. I'm just not that interested in the monarchy. I'm not really. Like on a surface level, like when the Queen was around. Love the Queen. She was great. Now Charlie's the king. Less interested.
Yeah.
And the whole Harry Meghan thing, I just found distasteful on multiple levels from multiple angles. You know, I think they're by no means saints in this whole thing, and equally the way they treated was pretty distasteful as well. So I think it's all just a bit too drama for my liking. Yeah. And whilst I love a little, we were talking about reality TV last week. Whilst I love a little bit of drama every now and then, this just feels like
not right.
Drama I'm not interested in.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, I grew up obviously when Princess Diana died, and seeing the two young boys walking behind her coffin was a very kind of iconic moment. But and I'm therefore I'm very sad that the two brothers don't stay in touch, don't communicate. That makes me very sad. But I do think, whilst Harry's the youngest, and I don't know, I just think he sometimes goes about it just in a very strange way with doing it all on television rather than actually have the conversations that you need to have, but outside of the media.
Yeah. It's a very bizarre dynamic because it's like we've got absolutely no idea what goes on behind closed doors. We get the media version of what goes on behind closed doors, but you just don't know what's the truth. And, because like everything's politicized as well, so it's just a really strange one. At least I find it really strange to cast any kind of opinion on the topic other than just general distaste because it's like, you've got absolutely no idea what the truth is, so like it kind of feels a little bit redundant to like effectively pick sides, because it just feels like a web of lies regardless of where you look.
Yeah, no, it doesn't look very great. Anyway, shall we move on and talk about our relationship with siblings? So do you want to talk about your birth order?
Yeah.
Because we're different.
We are very different. Yeah. We are different. So I'm an oldest daughter. I'm oldest of two. So as in I have a younger brother. And there's about 2.5 years between us, which I feel that's quite a good gap. And I think generally we get on really well. I think, you know, you have that natural sibling, like a little bit of sibling rivalry, a little bit of, you know, we had moments in our childhood where we really did not get on over certain things, and there are times where we've sort of been a bit apart from each other, and then equally, but I do think there's a lot of love and a lot of respect that has continued on throughout our relationship. So
and as the eldest,
yes,
like, what is your relationship towards having a younger brother?
I love it. I couldn't imagine being an only child. I like the way that it's shaped my view. I think I'm like that very stereotypical eldest daughter of like, I take on a lot of responsibility. I like to excel at things. I like to set a good example. I'm just like that stereotypical, you know, and on the flip side as well of like, I'm really scared to fail. And like, you know, I think there's a lot of stereotypical stuff assigned with being the eldest child that I very much identify with and have definitely seen play out. And yeah, I you know, it's part of my identity in a sense to be an eldest daughter. And I'm also one of the oldest. Well, I'm the oldest on your side as well. I'm the oldest child on your side, and I'm one of the oldest on Dad's side as well. So I think, you know, it is, I just feel old wherever I look. But overall, I absolutely love having a brother. You know, I remember when I was little being like, oh, I wish I had a sister. But like, I'm very, very happy, very content with the little dynamic that we've got going. And it's fun having a boy sibling because you know, we can get into it, but like we're both sporty and active and competitive, and you know, and that's quite nice to have that like yin and yang kind of dynamic between us. But what about you?
Well, I'm the youngest, so
we are opposites.
I have an older sister and I have an older brother. So my sister's about 4.5 years older than me, and my brother about 2.5 years older. And yeah, I mean, in terms of growing up, when I was young, my brother and I didn't, even though we were closer in age, we didn't really have that much in common. Whereas both my sister and I, we both loved horses. Yeah. So that was the thing that bound us, was that I think I was probably the annoying younger sister that was always tagging along with the older sister. And I imagine that my sister probably felt like she was always responsible for me. So yeah, it's kind of being the youngest. I think the benefit of being the youngest was that I definitely think my older sister had more rules and boundaries, and I think my parents were working out how to parent their first child.
Well, yeah, because you're the oldest is the experiment, right?
Exactly.
Like
you don't get a handbook.
Yes, no. We are like the creation of the handbook.
So I think my sister probably had many more fallings out with my parents than I did. I think by the time they got to me, it was like, do whatever you like. So I think I had a much more freedom, and probably ended up doing things sooner than they did. But again, I enjoyed having an older sister, and you know, and I'm actually now closer to my brother than I am my sister. So it's gone different stages of life, you know, kind of circumstances, location, you know, I think it plays quite a big role in whether you stay close to, you know, your siblings or not. So what about, I'm curious about kind of styles of communication with siblings, and whether, again, generationally, whether it's very different. Between you and I. So how do you and your brother generally stay in touch?
So we're both massive introverts. Like, is he an introvert? I don't know.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. I was like, I feel like having been out with him yesterday, so we went to a rugby game together and watching him with his friends. He was so confident, so talkative, and I don't think I've ever seen him be so talkative with people, and I was like, what is going on here? But like, I loved watching that, and you know, it makes me feel very proud as his older sister.
It's cute.
But so like, we don't really phone each other to catch up very much. And I don't know if that's because we don't want to or just because we kind of never have. So I don't know if, I feel like I should ask him, being like, should we phone each other more? But primarily it's like we'll send each other videos that make us laugh. So like on Instagram we'll just send each other like funny memes or like stupid videos, normally of dogs doing stupid things. Or like I'll send him pictures of Marty being cute and adorable. But yeah, so like we don't actually really communicate that much when we're apart.
Yeah.
But it kind of, we just like gel very well when we're in person, which is nice.
Yeah.
But we did 2 years ago, we went on holiday together, which was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. We went to go and watch the Formula One together in Budapest, which was that was a fun holiday. I really enjoyed that. And and he and I have also said that we really want to make sure that as we get older and start having families and things like that, that we stay really connected, because we would like our families to be close as well. So
I think I love the fact that you've had that conversation, because that just makes my heart warm to think that, the two of you would want to grow up with your, families. I think your dad does a much better job at staying closer than my family does. And I don't know whether it was, so in terms of, I will message my brother, message my sister, the listeners won't know, but my sister is blind. And, she can still use voice messaging and and that obviously comes through as a text message. We'll phone each other, but she lives in Wales, and therefore I don't see her as much. So there's quite a lot of distance between her and I, so it's only once or twice a year we actually get together, which is
just difficult.
It is hard, when everybody's lives are really busy. It's quite difficult to stay in touch. But my brother only lives about half an hour, 40 minutes away, so I get to see him much more in his family. But again, kind of busy lives. It's really difficult to make time. Whereas I think your dad's side of the family, I think they're much more intentional about spending time with each other. And I don't know whether that's because Granny's still alive, like there's the matriarch that kind of holds the system together. Certainly when my mum and dad were alive, we would get together. That's much
true,
more.
Actually. I hadn't really thought about that. So
it'd be interesting to see if and when Granny passes. I imagine, they are very close.
They're a very close-knit family, and I feel like it's much more routine almost for them to see each other. But I think you're right. I think it's it's just something that they really prioritize is seeing each other. And I think that's the conversation that I've had with my brother, is that actually like I want to be able to prioritize us spending time with each other more, because a friendship with him is very important to me, and I think it's important to him as well. So I think that's, it's one of those things of, I think it's so easy with family to effectively not put the effort in. Because it's like, oh, well, they'll always be there. At least I think that's sometimes the trap that I can fall into. And I think actually something that I can learn from Dad's side of the family is the effort that they put into seeing each other. And it's like I make plans with my friends. Why am I not making plans with my brother and my cousins and things like that? So I think that's just something potentially that I would like to shift.
And I don't know. It's funny, isn't it? I don't see, as I said, I don't see my sister very much, and I don't really have that much communication with my brother. But when we're together, it's like we've never been apart. And I don't necessarily, sometimes I feel guilty, that we're not in more contact, but I don't feel a huge amount. And I don't know whether that was our upbringing, because we were brought up in the army and we changed and we moved around a lot, and, we were very adaptable. But I don't feel the need to be in each other's lives. And there are moments when I feel guilty that we're not speaking as perhaps as much as we should. Although, when the chips were down, so when, our dad died, the three of us, rallied. We were inseparable for that period of time, incredibly supportive, everybody pulling their weight. We had a moment here in this house, I remember, where the three of us were all staying in the same house, which we hadn't done for years and years. So You know, I don't think you always have to be in each other's pockets to be a close sibling. So I do think there are different varieties of how to do sibling relationships.
Well, and that's the thing, right? I think the important thing is, as long as everyone's happy with the dynamic at which you're creating and the frequency and that kind of thing. I think my wish to be more intentional is because I would like to spend more time with my brother.
Yeah.
And so therefore it would bring me more joy to spend more time with him.
Yeah.
But I think that is actually, even though lives are getting busier as we're both now at an adult phase.
Yeah. And also his job will take him away for long periods of time.
Yeah. But what I was going to say was, like, whilst it's trickier from a time perspective, actually I think we're finding we've got more and more in common.
Yeah.
Which is nice, because actually, you know, like this morning, because he stayed with me this weekend, this morning we went out for a run together, and that's something that we never would have done when we were, you know, when he was 13 and I was 15.
Yeah.
You know, so I think actually, you know, we're going to spend the entire day today playing board games. You know, but so I think actually as we're becoming adults, we're finding we have more things that are similar than we do different. Whereas I think when we were little, you identify the things that are different to separate yourself from them and to be like, I'm my own person, so here are all the things that I'm different.
Yeah.
Because I think as kids, especially when you're living under the same roof, it's so easy to like be in competition with each other, whether it's for parental affection, whether it's for plaudits and praise. And, you know, I think as adults, when we're living two very, very distinct lives, there's less to be in competition about. So actually we can connect over the things we're more similar.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've said to both of you, when you've been in and out of relationships, that, you know, you will always have each other, you know, so it's massively important to me that you, you know, that you the two of you do stay connected, and, you know, build that bond as you get older. So yeah, I'm really happy that the two of you are kind of making the effort in the way that you are right now.
You look like you were about to dive into something.
Well, I guess I was just thinking about different styles. You know, you were saying that you stay connected with, you know, kind of memes and silly stuff. I mean, our generation, I don't, like, they weren't even around at that point. So it feels weird. I think
funny clippings in the newspaper.
Yeah, we're more likely to phone each other and talk, whereas you don't like talk, do you?
I know, but I think that's almost because, like, we've never, like, I don't know, there's something weird to me about phoning him for a catch up. I don't know why it's weird, but I don't know, because like I phone you and I phone my dad at least once or twice a week to give him a catch up on what's going on in my life and to hear what's going on in his. And for some reason I don't do that. And I don't really know why. Because it was like, I got a phone call from him like a month ago. He rang me, I pick it up and I was like, is everything okay? What's wrong?
Emergency.
Assumed because he'd phoned me something was terribly wrong. And he's like, I was just ringing to see if we could make plans. It's like, well, this is bizarre. What's going on here?
It's nice that you have other different ways of
Yeah.
kind of messaging and connecting and stuff.
Yeah.
What about in terms of the importance of siblings and ease of communication? I guess I'm just thinking about other people and you know, different types of, I mean, your friends, kind of what are their relationships like with siblings?
I think it really varies. You know, I think it's, you know, what you were saying right at the top of the episode, I think everyone's dynamic with their siblings is so different, and so much of that will be the household in which they were brought up in, the type of like education they had as well, of like, you know, did they go to the same school, different schools? Did they go to boarding school? Did they, you know, were they living at home the entire time? I think it's so context dependent, that I don't think I know a single person who has a similar relationship to me, but that's because everyone's is slightly different.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's kind of hard to like do a one size fits all, but I think the bit that I would come back to is the what brings the most joy. And it's like if you're not feeling fulfilled or like joyful about the way in which you are keeping contact, maybe that's because you're two in each other's pockets, and you actually need some space, because I certainly felt like that for a while.
Because I think if you're doing it under obligation, there's a certain energy rather than actually we're here because we really want to be with each other. I think when you're doing it out of a sense of duty, either because that's what your parents expect you to do, or there's a family thing that you need to do. I think that's when it strains, I think, probably sibling relationships.
And then equally, I think it's also, if you want to see them more, then where you can, make the effort to see them more. I think it's as important to put effort in as it is your friendships and your relationships, and it's just determining where it sits on your priority list. It's that the conversation he and I were having this morning actually was, that diagram about like the star of all the different things going on in your life. So sleep, exercise, family, friends, and work and relationships. Maybe it's a 6-pointed star, and you actually only really have time for 3 at any one time. And I think it's okay that in different seasons those priorities look different, but I think it's acknowledging that family is one of those priorities, and so if you would like to invest in more, then you're going to need to shift other things around to accommodate for that time and energy as well. So I think that's just something that at least I'm in a bit of a phase of life at the moment of I'm working out effectively which of the 3 am I going to be prioritizing, because I think at the moment I'm not particularly satisfied in the way that I'm managing my time and life at the moment. So I just need to do a little bit of a revisit.
But I guess when you can double up, so like running and being with your brother, then that's like a win-win then, isn't it?
But that's, 100%. And I think it's finding those things, because for me, one of the ways that I keep in contact with some of my friends is to go and exercise with them. And as you say, that ticks off 2 things, and that fills me with so much joy, and I love that. So I do think it is going to be things like that. I just need to get better at running. He can run absolute circles around me, and I'm gasping for air. No,
he never used to. So he's trained himself.
We actually had a conversation about that this morning of like how much, because he was talking about the fact that he actually felt quite a lot of pressure when he was little, because I was 2 years older, and therefore I was more developed in the sports that I was playing, and I always took my sport really seriously as well. And actually was he putting 15-year-old Amy expectations onto his 13-year-old body? Probably a little bit. So it's like, and it goes back to that thing that I was talking about earlier of like, actually when we were kids and teenagers, there was at least I think we focused a lot more on what separated us versus what brought us together. Did you have that, do you think?
I think because my sister and I were sort of into horses, that was definitely something that brought us together. I'm not sure my brother and I ever really had an intentional conversation, in the way that you and your brother have.
But isn't that, did you ever feel like you were like trying to differentiate yourself from them more?
I mean, certainly as the youngest, I trying to find my space was actually really was actually quite tricky. I always sort of, I don't know, with 3 children, it always felt like that I was like the spare part, like there was a child for each parent, and then I was a sort of outside one. So I think I was generally trying to find my own space. I mean, I was quite sporty, and neither of my brother or my sister sort of really, team sports. They never really excelled at team sports. So I guess that was my space, was I would do the, netball and hockey, and, they didn't really. My sister certainly didn't play sport, and my brother wasn't really a rugby player or a hockey player or anything. So I think that was probably the area that I managed to carve out a little bit of difference. But I felt pressure as the youngest to constantly be keeping up with them. I can remember, we used to travel to my my nan's every Sunday for Sunday roast, and they would be playing games in the car, and I couldn't keep up because I was the youngest, and I used to get so incredibly frustrated that I wasn't able to keep up with my siblings. It was not. I don't find being the youngest that easy. I think you are constantly trying to strive to be to be like your brothers and your sisters, which I don't know now whether I don't feel the youngest now, actually.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there were moments where when Mum was poorly, I really felt like I was the oldest. My sister was limited in what she was able to do. My brother was, busy at that point in his life.
Because he had very young children at that point.
He had incredibly young children at that point. So I really felt like I was the oldest at that point. But when Dad passed, my brother really stepped up.
Yeah.
He was incredibly, strong at that point. And I, felt like I could be the younger sister at that point. So it's funny an age thing, isn't it? I
think that's a really interesting concept, though. I think, again, as adults, just in life, age starts to become a little bit irrelevant.
Yeah.
If I think about, you think about like relationships, and it just becomes effective to a certain degree, slightly irrelevant who's older, who's younger, by how much. And it's interesting, actually. I think your sibling relationships get a bit more fluid, and effectively that birth order slightly gets a little bit more fluid, as well as you've got different pieces of context going on in your lives. And I certainly feel like that as well, where it's like, there are some things where I certainly still feel the oldest, and there are some things where I get completely surprised by. It was what was it the other day? It was it was birthday presents. That was it. It was birthday presents for Dad, and I was like, okay, so I've got this, and then I can get you a card if you want. And he was just like, I'm done already. I'm sorted. I was like, what do you mean I'm not going to organise the present on your behalf? But that moment of like, oh crap, like
You're two adults now.
Yeah, and I don't need to be the oldest sister in this domain anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he's going to be too happy hearing that, because I reckon he quite likes having the backup every now and then of going, oh, well, Amy's going to sort the card out for me, so it's all right.
But I guess it's choices, isn't it? Where, again, context, like which one of you steps forward at which point to kind of take the lead on that. Yeah. I mean, the bit that I love that you talk about is like how you want it to be in the future. I don't think I ever had that kind of conversation, not an intentional conversation with my siblings about how close did we want to be, and did we want to bring our children up together or not, and that. So I'm thrilled that the two of you have those conversations.
Yeah. Well, I think. You know what? I think we actually started having them when you and Dad split. Because I think it was that moment of like, okay, life's not going to quite look how we thought it was going to look. So what does that look like? And I think it's actually, you and Dad splitting has been a bit of a catalyst for us to have a bit more of these conversations, because it's like, oh, well, we're not just going to fall into patterns and traditions in the way that potentially you would when your parents are together, because then it's like, oh, well, you know what you're doing for Christmas and Easter and da-da-da-da. Yeah. Whereas now actually it requires a bit more planning. And thankfully you've both settled close to each other. It's only an hour's drive between you and Dad, so it actually, you can mentally go, okay, I can slightly see what this future looks like, because if we all stay in the same kind of, currently we all live within an hour and a half of each other. Yeah. So it actually just, then you go, okay, so what does that look like, and what do we want to happen? And I think, we've both said we would like to be able to raise families together, and, we would love our kids to be friends with each other, and, and I think
But that, I mean, what you're talking about there is really interesting as a dynamic, though, because if you separate, I don't know, it's like when you're a 4, you're bound with a 4, and then when 2 pull apart, it's like the 2 of you are sort of in the middle, and I wonder if that does, for you, thankfully it sort of bound you closer, whereas I wonder with some...
It didn't for a while, though. I don't think it did for a while, because it all happened when I moved out to university. Suddenly he and I aren't living together, you and Dad aren't living together either, so I do think we did have like a good 3-year period where I don't really think it bound us together that much. I think it to a degree it did, but I do think the period of time where I was at university, I mean, it was a very tough time for me anyway, so I don't think I mentally was... I
think it was a tough time for all of us. It was a tough time for you at uni. My son and I were on our own. In the house, and Dad was somewhere else, so we were all struggling, I think, to find our feet and to adjust and transition. So it was, I think, a difficult time for everybody.
But I think it helped. I think in the long run, it's helped him and I get closer. And I think now it does bind us together a lot more. Yeah. But I think we had to work out what our little team looked like. And I think whilst I wasn't around, I didn't have time.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't have the time together to work that out because I was only ever home for a few periods at a time and
having a difficult time yourself.
And I was having a very difficult time. So I didn't have the mental capacity to, hardly had the mental capacity to look after myself at that point, let alone working out what that dynamic now looked like with my brother. So I think as I got, I got through that tough period and got out the other side, and suddenly you're like, oh my God, there's all of these other relationships in my life that I really want to invest in, and I can actually now look at with some fresh eyes and go, oh, this is what I would like it to look like now. So I think that has really helped.
Yeah. I think I think there's something very precious about sibling relationships. I think I was saying earlier on, when you've both been in relationships and, you've split up, or, my son split up, and the thought that you've always got each other, regardless of what goes on with partnerships. And that I think is always a really
100% to know you've always got someone who's in your corner just
which
is very nice.
It's very, very cool. So in terms of wrapping up, if you think about chatting matters with siblings, any thoughts about that in terms of what we've spoken about?
I think my word of the day for this episode is intention. I think it's it's like reflection and intention, I think, because it's like having a little think about your own sibling relationship and go, am I fulfilled with this? Am I happy? Do I like it? Do I want to change it? Do we want to change it? And then making some intentional choices, because I think, as I was saying earlier, I think it's so easy to either slip into obligation or just to slip into patterns that have been established for years. So I think, it's kind of like taking that relationship by the reins.
Yeah.
By the horns, by the reins. I can't remember I can't work out which saying I'm trying to work through.
Bull by the horns.
Yeah, bull by the horns. There we go. And I think I think this is applicable to any age, but I think I'm more speaking to people in their 20s and 30s, like me. And I think especially for that early 20s, as you're transitioning into adulthood, of going, okay, what does this look like for a new phase of our life? So I think I'm probably more speaking from that frame of reference than anything else.
I think that's great. I think being intentional. I think there's probably a lot of unspoken in my age, and I'm not sure whether we're going to fix that or whether I think I'm okay with it. Yeah. I don't.
Well, you found your rhythm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know that any of us are unhappy.
Yeah.
With it, even though it's not as constant as.
How would you feel about having a conversation about with your siblings?
I could.
Do you want to?
I don't know that I need. I don't know that I need to, really. I don't feel like there's anything missing. I don't know if they do.
Well, that was going to be. I guess that was going to be my follow-up question of, I guess, how do you know that they're both happy with it as well?
Yeah. Well, I don't, when we speak to each other, there's never a sense of, well, why haven't you called me? Why haven't you been in touch? I think we're just, when we chat, and it's like, we'll speak next time sort of thing. Yeah. So I don't really feel like there's anything massively missing. I think if my sister's, if she was on her own, at the moment she's, in a very loving relationship but I think if and when, I think the dynamic may change if she was on her own, because she's very far away from us. And, would that then mean that we could bring her closer? And I have had that conversation with her, when Dad was passing, I was saying to my sister, if you were in this situation, would you come closer? Because I think she misses family. Yeah. She's not really been around when cousins have grown up, nieces and nephews have grown up. Yeah. So I think she misses that. So I think if anything was to change in terms of her circumstance, then I think that I'm not sure he's going to do that.
No, I just tried to pull the dog onto my lap and it just did not go well in the slightest. I really thought I was going to get a sleepy cuddle from him.
No, I don't think so. So I don't feel like anything needs to be massively, massively changed. I think if I felt like we needed to, then I would be okay to have
Yeah.
it. But I think I'm okay at the moment with it.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Alrighty, shall we give it a wrap for today? I know I have a flight to catch.
A flight to catch. You're off.
I am off for the week, so I feel like I need to make sure that I've got everything packed.
Get your head in the game.
I know.
'Cause you're off for work, aren't you? You're not just off for fun, sadly.
No, I am off for work, and thank you very much for looking after Marty.
No worries. He's actually being split. As the youngest sibling, his 2 oldest siblings are looking after him this week.
That's right, yeah. So he's getting moved around, but at least he's with the 2 of you, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah. Very good.
Alrighty. Well, it was. Thank you for joining us for another week. If any of you have got any thoughts on sibling relationships, anything that you would like Amy and I to chat about, we would love to hear from you at chattermatterspod.
Outlook.com.
Beautiful. All right. We'll see you next week.
See you later.
Bye.